I'd love to then welcome Ajahn. If you can just bow 3 times. I know that we're sitting down, but if you could just bow 3 times to our teacher. And then we will be taking the 5 precepts together. So if Narciso, if you would be so kind.
I will get that started. Mayang Pante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yachama Dutiyampi Mayang Pante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yachama Tatiyampi Mayang Pante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami.
Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami.
Saṅghāṃ saranang gacchami.
Saṅghāṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammāṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi saṅghāṃ saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Saṅghāṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammāṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi saṅghāṃ saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Saṅghāṃ saranang gacchami.
Isaranakamana nititaṃ.
Amma bhante.
Pāṇātipātā Vairamani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Pāṇātipātā Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinādāna Vairamani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinādāna Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāmesu miccācārā Vairamani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāmesu miccācārā Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvādā Vairamani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvādā Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya Manjapamadatthana Vairamani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya Majapamadatthana Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sambara. Silena nipating yanti tasma silang visodhayeng. Okay, we're ready to meditate. Get in a comfortable position. Close your eyes. And think thoughts of goodwill. Goodwill is a wish for true happiness, your true happiness, and the true happiness of others. And because true happiness comes from within, there's no conflict between your happiness and that of others. So this is a thought that you can extend to all beings in all directions, everywhere, without any conflict. Start first with thoughts of goodwill for yourself. Just tell yourself, may I be truly happy. May I understand the causes for true happiness and be willing and able to act on them. Then extend the same thought to others. Start with people who are close to your heart, your family, your very close friends. May they find true happiness too. And then spread that thought out in ever-widening circles. People you know well and like. People you like even though you don't know them so well. People you're more neutral about. And people you don't like. Remember, the world would be a much better place if everyone could find true happiness within. And spread thoughts of goodwill to people you don't even know. And not just people, living beings of all kinds. East, west, north, south. Above and below, out to infinity. May we all find true happiness in our hearts. Now bring your attention to the breath. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths. And notice where you feel the process of breathing in the body. Because when we talk about breath, it's not just the air coming in and out through the nose. It's a process by which the body brings the air in and takes it out. After all, the air doesn't come in and out on its own. Breathing is something the body does. And if you notice that long breathing feels good, keep it up. If not, you can change the rhythm. You can try shorter breathing, or in short, out long, in long, out short. Fast, slow, heavy, light, deep or shallow. Experiment for a while to see what rhythm and breathing feels best for the body right now. If your mind wanders away from the breath, just drop whatever thought it was that you were following, and you'll be right back at the breath. If it happens 10 times, 100 times, keep coming back. 10 times, 100 times. Don't get discouraged. Don't come down hard on yourself. Each time you come back, in fact, reward yourself with a breath that feels especially gratifying. One that feels good deep down to the body. As a way of rewarding yourself for coming back and making yourself more and more inclined to want to come back. If there are any pains in the body, don't focus on the pains. Focus on the parts of the body that you can make comfortable with the breathing. Now, as the breath gets comfortable, there is a tendency to go for the comfort and to drop the breath, in which case you lose the foundation of your concentration. So to counteract that tendency, once the breath gets comfortable, the next step is to breathe in and out aware of the entire body. And a good way to build up to that whole body awareness is to start going through the body first, section by section, to familiarize yourself with how the breathing feels in different parts of the body. More obvious in some, less obvious in others. A good place to start is down around the navel. Locate that part of the body in your awareness. Watch it for a while as you breathe in and breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels best there. And if you feel any sense of tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax, so that no new tension builds up as you breathe in. And you're not holding on to any tension as you breathe out. You move your attention up to the solar plexus, the area right in front of the stomach, and follow the same 3 steps there. In other words, 1, locate that part of the body in your awareness. 2, watch it for a while as you breathe in and breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. And then 3, if there's any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. And move your attention up to the middle of the chest and follow the same steps there. And move your attention to the base of the throat and follow the same steps there. Now bring your attention to the base of the throat and follow the same steps there. And bring your attention to the middle of the head. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering not only to the nose, but also to the eyes and the ears. And from the back of the head down from the top of the head, going deep into the brain. And then as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the head in all directions, working through any patterns of tension you may feel around the jaws, the forehead, the eyes, the back of the neck. Allow those patterns of tension to dissolve away. Now focus your attention at the back of the neck. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there from the back and then going down the shoulders, through the arms, the hands, the fingers to the tips of the fingers. And then as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from all those parts of the body into the air. And as you get more familiar with these parts of the body, if you notice that you're holding more tension in one side than the other, allow that side to relax, to bring things into balance. And then see if you can keep it relaxed all the way through the in-breath, all the way through the out. Now, keeping your attention focused to the back of the neck, this time as you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there, and then going down both sides of the spine, down to the tailbone. And then as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the entire back into the air. And as you get more sensitive to the back, if you notice that you're holding more tension in one side than the other, allow that side to relax. And see if you keep it relaxed as you breathe in, as you breathe out. And move your attention to the base of the spine. As you breathe in, think of breath energy entering there and then going down through the hips, the legs, the feet, the toes. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from all those parts of the body into the air. And here again, if you notice that you're holding more tension in one side of the body than the other, allow that side to relax. See if you can keep it relaxed all the way through the in-breath, all the way through the out. And that completes one cycle in the survey of the body. If you were meditating on your own, you can go through the body as many times as you like. To find any patterns of tension you may have missed the first time around. But for this time, choose any one spot in the body that seems most most congenial, easiest to focus on or most pleasant to focus on. Allow your attention to settle there, and then from that spot to spread out to fill the entire body. So you're aware of the whole body breathing in, the whole body breathing out. Now the range of your attention may have a tendency to shrink, especially on the out breath. So keep reminding yourself each time you breathe in, whole body. Each time you breathe out, whole body. And allow the breath to find whatever rhythm feels best. Your only responsibility right now is to try to maintain a sense of centered but broad awareness. Like a candle in an otherwise dark room. The flame of the candle is in one spot, but its light fills the entire room. You would have that same quality to your awareness, because it's healing for the body, healing for the mind. Because it's still and all around, it provides a good foundation for insight into the mind to arise. But for the time being, don't worry about the insights, just try to make sure this foundation is strong. Now you can continue meditating as I give the talk. The Buddha's central teaching is on the power of action, the power of your intentions to determine the pleasure and pain you meet within your life. The very first person, the Dhammapada, saying that the mind is the forerunner of all things, points to the fact that the mind is the agent that determines what you're going to experience. It's not just on the receiving end of things, it's actually the motive factor. Now the Buddha didn't pick up his teachings on action or karma from the culture of his time. They did have the word karma for action, but the way he explained action and its importance was original with him. So if you want to understand any of his other teachings, you have to understand this teaching first. Karma is the quality of the intention, what you mean to do or mean to accomplish in any action. We act for the sake of something, usually for happiness. We expect results. Karma teaches us that actions will give results in terms of pleasure or pain, depending on the quality of the intention. If the intention is skillful, we meet with pleasure. If it's unskillful, we meet with pain. This is why the Buddha expressed his awakening in terms of a causal principle. Now, he's interested not in causality in general terms, like the causality you see on a billiard table or the moons of Jupiter. He was interested in the causality as it relates to intentional actions and their results. And his causal principle that he talked about was that some actions give their results immediately and some give over time. The image he has of the image is giving over time is like a seed that will sprout at a certain time. In this case, it could sprout within the next few minutes, it could sprout later on in this life or in other lifetimes. Which means that any present moment is composed of two things: the results of past intentions that are sprouting or giving their fruits at that moment, plus your present intentions. And the results of those present intentions. In fact, your present intentions are the things that you experience first. When the Buddha describes this process in terms of dependent co-arising, your present intentions come first, and then you sense what's coming in from your past karma. Now, you do have some freedom in what you choose to do right now. Not everything is determined by your past intentions. The past intentions may limit the range of your choices, but you can always choose to do something skillful, and that's an important point. In practice, as we practice the Buddha's teachings, we're exercising this freedom of choice. The more skillful we do so, the greater our freedom to act in ways that lead to happiness and well-being will be. And this is why we meditate, to see the choices we're making right now, and to try to make better ones. We have to realize that meditation is a skill. We're not here just simply being with whatever comes up. We're conscious of the fact that we're shaping things and we want to do it well. For example, mindfulness practice is there for the sake of giving rise to right concentration. The Buddha never describes mindfulness as something separate from concentration. It's always there for the purpose of getting the mind to settle down with a sense of well-being, alert, with a broad experience of the body, firmly settled, it's a sense of dwelling in the body right now. There are two tasks in mindfulness. The first is focused on something in and of itself. It can be the body in and of itself, feelings in and of themselves, the mind in and of itself, or mental qualities in and of themselves. And the second task is putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. Now, focusing on these things in and of themselves means that you don't focus on them in terms of the world. Like the body in terms of the world would be, is the body beautiful? Is it attractive to other people? Is it strong enough to do the work the world demands? That's the body in terms of the world. But you're trying to change your frame of reference, so you're not thinking about the world, you're thinking about just the body in and of itself. As you deal with these things in and of themselves, you're supposed to apply three qualities, all of which are related to the action. You apply mindfulness, you keep in mind what you should be doing. You're not accepting things or you're exercising bare intention. You're keeping in mind what you should be doing and you recognize what's coming up. You remember things so that you can recognize something skillful is coming, you know what to do with it. Something unskillful is coming, you know what to do with that. In other words, you want to remember the appropriate task, which is to abandon what's unskillful and to develop what's skillful. The second quality is alertness. You watch what you're doing and the results that you're doing, that you're getting from what you're doing. And then third, there's ardency. You're trying to do this well. You put your whole heart into doing it well. This is where meditation becomes a skill. Of the three qualities, when Ajahn Lee describes them, this is the wisdom quality. After all, mindfulness can remember just about anything. You can be alert to whatever you're doing. You're in the process of robbing a bank, you can be very alert to that. But ardency is what realizes what's skillful and what's not, the danger of what allowing unskillful habits to take over. And trying your best to do what's skillful. And that's what's wise about the practice. So what are you doing as you're meditating? The Buddha points out there are three kinds of fabrication that we do in the present moment as we put together our experience from the raw material of the past. You can think of this as our cooking skills. The raw material coming from the past is like the food that's available to us at any one time. And then the three kinds of fabrication that the Buddha describes is what we're doing in the present moment. These are our cooking skills. You've got three fabrications with bodily fabrication, which is the breath, verbal fabrication, which are directed thought and evaluation. So when you talk to yourself, you put a positive topic in mind, and then you make comments on it, ask questions about it, decide whether it's good or bad. Then finally, mental fabrication, which are feelings, which are feeling tones of pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain. And then perceptions, these are the labels you apply to things. Like, you see this, and you say, watch. You see this, mug. Those are perceptions. And we encounter these things in meditation. But the breath, of course, is the object of our meditation. As we're trying to adjust the breath and make it comfortable to see if it's good for the body, if it's too energizing or too relaxing, I'm trying to make adjustments. And I'm trying to figure out how to give rise to a sense of pleasure, a sense of ease with the breath. And then once there is a sense of ease, how to spread that around to get the most use out of it. So you're not just wallowing in the pleasure, you're actually getting some use out of it. All of that is directed thought and evaluation. As you're talking to yourself about the process that's going on, you can also talk about whether your mind is settling with the breath. This is where a lot of the skill in the meditation comes in, is how you talk to yourself. Noticing what's going on, and then realizing, okay, there are things that have to be adjusted. How do you adjust them? The Buddha talks about steadying the mind, gladdening the mind, and releasing the mind. There's three things you might want to look into. Steadying the mind is for when the mind is just scattered all over the place. Try to figure out some way of either breathing or thinking about other topics that will bring the mind to peace, make it stable and steady in the present moment. For example, you find some ways of breathing are too energizing, so you try to breathe in a way that's more calming. If you find that that doesn't work, the Buddha recommends that you start thinking about the possibility of death. Death could come at any time. Do you want to die when your mind is all scattered around like this? Well, no. So it gives you an impetus to want to get the mind to settle down and to see that the scattered mind is not really what you need. Sometimes the mind will say, well, I've got to think about this, I've got to think about that, I've got to worry about this, worry about that. And you see the meditation time as free time to wander about anything you want. But you have to tell yourself, and this is verbal fabrication, that you don't know what's going to happen in the future. All kinds of things can happen. And to be particularly prepared for the unexpected, you need a lot of mindfulness, a lot of alertness, a lot of concentration. So as you meditate and develop these qualities, you're actually doing your best preparation for the future. So that's one way of thinking your way back to steadying the mind. Then there's gladdening the mind. When the mind is depressed or when it's just sleepy, tired, what do you do to give it some energy? Here again, there are ways of breathing that can give you energy. You can do long in, out short, long in, out short. Or you can think about the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha as something to give you refreshment. You can think about your own virtue. You can think about your own generosity in the past. to remind yourself that yes, you do have some good to you, that you have what it takes in order to be a meditator, so that you don't get too depressed and too discouraged about the meditation. So there's ways of gladdening the mind. Then they're releasing the mind. When the mind is just weighed down to things with its concerns. How long is the pandemic going to last? What's going to happen to the future? All these things. Again, you have to remind yourself, it's a lot you don't know. You may not live to see it all. So what are you going to do? Well, you've got to prepare the mind by developing good qualities right now. So these are some of the things that you can do. You can use these different types of fabrication to get the mind in good shape. That's verbal fabrication, bodily fabrication to get the mind in shape. Then there's mental fabrication. These are perceptions. Like when you're with the breath, you have to have a perception of how the breath is flowing in the body. When it comes in, where does it come in? Or when it starts in the body, where does it start in the body? There are two ways of conceiving the breath. One is energy coming in from the outside. The other is energy in the body itself that then pulls the air in from the outside. So the first one, you can think of the breath coming in through the nose, and through the eyes, in through the ears, in through the different parts of the body. The other way is to think of the breath starting in the middle of the body. There's an energy that then flows out, and then the air comes in and out based on that flow of energy. So you can experiment with different ways of perceiving the breath and noticing what effect that has on how you can actually experience the breath and how much you can settle down with it. You can also perceive the breath as running along channels in the different parts of the body. In Thai, they talk about the breath channels. They correspond to a lot of the meridians in Chinese medicine. You can think of those, with the breath running down those as you breathe in, breathe out. And then you start thinking about them getting all connected, especially if you realize, okay, the breath actually starts in the body itself. The air is secondary. The breath is the body's movement. The breath is the body's contribution to all this. And if all the different channels are connected, there's a sense of fullness that comes in, then you find that you have less and less of a need to breathe. And if you can perceive yourself as being able to survive just on the oxygen that comes out in through the pores, then when the body slows down, the breath slows down, it gets to a point where it stops. You can have a perception that this is not scary. And this perception allows you to stay there with that state where you're just very, very still. And so you begin to see the power of perception as you shape your experience of the present moment here in the meditation. So these are things that you can do, that you can approach as a skill. As I say, you experiment with different ways of talking to yourself, experiment with different ways of breathing, different perceptions that you hold in mind, see what effect they have on the state of your mind in the present moment. The meditation can become more and more skillful as you take note of how these things have an effect. Ajahn Lee gives the image of making baskets, making clay tiles. In other words, you start out, the teacher tells you, basically, this is how you weave the basket, this is how you make clay tiles. And then you go up and you make some on your own. Your first basket may not look all that good. Now, some people get discouraged right there, which doesn't help anything at all. You realize, okay, I've got to learn how to do it better. So you observe how you're doing the weaving. You observe the shape that you're getting. And you begin to say, well, when I do it this way, these are the results. When I do it that way, those are the results. Which is better? Weave another basket, critique that one, weave another basket. Watch yourself while you're weaving so that you can be clear about what you're doing, so that when you see the results, you see the connection between your actions and the results. And that way you can adjust your actions and make them more and more skillful. Well, the same principle applies to the breath, applies to the meditation. Now, as you're doing this in the meditation, it's not just for the sake of getting the mind into concentration, you're also developing the foundation for insight. You're beginning to see how you shape your present experience through fabrication. As the Buddha said, the topic of insight is how to see fabrications and how to develop them skillfully, and eventually how to get beyond them. You can't get beyond them until you've learned how to do them well. And you're going to realize that as you deal with these three kinds of fabrication, you're dealing with them not only when you meditate, but as you go through the day. The breath is always there as you go through the day. Sometimes when we hear about directed thought and evaluation in the first level of jhana, we say, gee, when do I start doing my directed thought? When do I do my evaluation? You're doing it all the time. The mind's constant chatter, it's constant commentary on things as you go through the day. That's directed thought and evaluation. When we're meditating, we're learning how to apply it specifically to getting the mind into concentration. But you begin to realize you're doing this all the time. And you begin to see, okay, this is how I shape my experience. And so if there's chatter going on in the mind that's unskillful, you can change it to something else. The same with the perceptions, the same with the feelings that you're developing in the way you breathe, through the way you talk to yourself. And you begin to realize that the different emotions that you experience as you go through the day are more artificial than you would have thought. We tend to think of our feelings as what we really feel, or our real feelings about something. But those feelings are something that we fabricated. They feel natural because they're habitual. But you begin to see, okay, if this is a bad habit, there are things I can change. You look at the way you breathe. Say you're getting angry at somebody, or angry in a group of people. First ask yourself, well, how am I breathing around this? Because if my breathing is uncomfortable, I will feel that I have to get something out of my system right now. And I get impatient. And when you're impatient like that, you start saying things and doing things that you're later going to regret. So keep that in mind. This is where mindfulness comes in dealing with your emotions. And then you're trying to be ardent in undoing those emotions. You can ask yourself, okay, how am I talking to myself now? Once the breath gets calmed down, how am I talking to myself about this? And when we get to this topic of verbal and mental fabrication, you have to realize that so many of the Buddhist teachings are there to give you new ideas for how you can engage in verbal fabrication, how you can engage in mental fabrication in a more skillful way. And his teachings are karma. They are not just because he was an Indian back in 2,500 years ago. They're useful ways of talking to yourself, bring the issue of karma into bear. You can ask yourself, okay, when I deal with these people who I'm angry about, okay, what kind of karma am I creating? Is it going to be good for me? This is where you start having to develop goodwill instead. And goodwill doesn't mean here that you just accept whatever they're doing, but it does mean that okay, you've got to figure out what is the most skillful thing to do right now. What is the most skillful way to think about this issue? When you breathe more calmly, bodily fabrication, okay, you can think straight about what's happening. And then as you develop goodwill, you realize that universal goodwill is not something that's innate in us. Sometimes we're told that goodwill or metta is our innate nature. Well, ill will is just as innate. It's just as easy to feel ill will about this. Our goodwill tends to be partial, which means that, okay, we can't trust ourselves all the time. We have goodwill for some people, ill will for other people. We'll probably act in an unskillful way for the people for whom we have ill will. So it's for our own good that we try to develop goodwill. Even for that, remembering what goodwill means. May they understand the causes for true happiness and be willing and able to act on them. If they did that, they would act in harmless ways. The world would be a better place. So ask yourself, is there anybody there for whom you can't feel that? And you might tell yourself, well, there's some people I'd like to see suffer a little bit first. But then you realize, okay, what's accomplished by that? A lot of people, when they suffer, they don't see that it's punishment for their own misbehavior. They see it in more of the world's being unfair to them. So it would be much better if they could come to their senses on their own. Realize, okay, I've done something wrong, I'm not going to do that again. That's something to wish for other people to have that insight is something you can wish for anybody. So remember that goodwill, the Buddha says, is a kind of mindfulness. It's something you've got to keep in mind. It's also a kind of determination. You make up your mind you're going to have goodwill for everybody regardless. And you keep that in mind. And then you have to exercise restraint. And we like to think of goodwill as being a large, open, boundless, open quality. But the Buddha says, no, it's a form of restraint because it will have to put restraint on our actions, on the way you think, on the way you speak to people, what you do around them. Another way of developing goodwill is to think about the fact that, as the Buddha said, you see somebody who's doing something that you don't like, or suffering in a way that you don't like, or somebody who is very rich in a way that you feel jealous for them. Remind yourself, you've been there before. This is really good, as the world seems to be dividing itself into tribes again. This group can't speak to that group can't speak to this group. You remind yourself, okay, in the past, I've probably been a member of all these different groups. I've been there before. These people are not foreign to me. Regardless of their nationality, regardless of their views, you've been there before. You can regard these people not as foreign, but simply as, this is the way human beings are. I've been a human being many, many times. I've been worse than a human being, better than a human being. I've been through this before. It helps you treat a lot of people with empathy that you otherwise might have trouble feeling empathy for. So you develop goodwill by the way you breathe. You treat yourself kindly to good breathing. And then for verbal fabrication, the Buddha has ways of telling you to think about the way that people speak. Human nature is that there are different kinds of speech that we have. There's speech that's good, speech that's not good, speech that's true, speech that's not true. Well-meaning, ill-meaning. This is all the nature of human speech. So when you meet up with someone who lies to you or someone who says something with bad intentions, you have to realize this is not all that out of the ordinary. This is the common nature of speech throughout the world. It makes it a lot easier to deal with. And then finally with perceptions, all the different images the Buddha recommends for you think about things. Perceive your goodwill as being large. He says, think of your goodwill as being like earth. People can spit on the earth, people can dig in the earth, people can urinate on the earth, but the earth is not moved by this. And the earth is not depleted by what they do. If you can have a goodwill that's not depleted by other people's unskillful actions, you're safe. And it is a form of strength. Sometimes people see that if you're not reacting in a like manner when people mistreat you, they think that you're being weak. But the Buddha reminds you that you're actually being strong. If they don't understand, that's their business. But you know yourself that you're being strong. Similarly, he says, make your goodwill like the river Ganges. The river Ganges cannot be set fire. You take a torch to it, it will not burn. You would have that kind of goodwill. Make your goodwill like space. People can try to write in space, but the letters don't stick. So your goodwill is that sort of thing. You don't keep other people's unskillful speech and brood on it. This deals with another perception the Buddha has. Is when people say something unskillful, just tell yourself, an unpleasant sound has made contact at the ear, and leave it at that. Now, how many times have you thought that? Usually think, well, how can they say that to me? How can this person do this to me? What kind of person are they? Have they no respect? In other words, as the Buddha says, you're being like a gong. Someone hits the gong with the mallet and it just reverberates for a long, long time. You have to realize that the reason you're suffering from this is you are the one who pulled the sound in. If you can perceive it that way, then it's a lot easier to deal with on people's unskillful speech. So these are some of the perceptions that you can use to deal with difficult situations in life. And you use the framework of these three fabrications. Keep this in mind. Remind yourself, any emotion that comes up, it's got its bodily component, it's got its verbal component, it's got its mental component. And you can take it apart in those ways. I mean, which way, say, an emotion comes up, fear comes up, jealousy comes up. Okay, how am I breathing around this? What are the ways I'm talking to myself about this? What are the perceptions I'm holding in mind that create feelings in the mind that make it difficult to deal with this? How can I change these perceptions, these ways of talking, this way of breathing, so that I don't have to fall into that unskillful emotion, which will then lead me to do unskillful things. So the Buddha's analysis here is helpful not only as you meditate, get a sense of when the mind is not settling down, what you look into the way you breathe, you look into the way you're talking to yourself, you look into the perceptions you're holding in mind, and the feelings you're creating, and you can change those. Once you understand these things, that's a kind of fabrication, which is a kind of karma that you're dealing with in the present moment. You're looking at your cooking skills. You're saying, okay, my cooking skills are lacking. I've just been doing whatever I picked up from my parents, picked up from my friends, without really thinking about it. But I'm going to be more conscious about making my cooking skills more and more skillful, so that no matter what is in the refrigerator, no matter what is in the garden, I can make good food out of it. That's the sign of a good cook. So those are the thoughts I'd like to share tonight, or this morning, wherever you are. Are there any questions? either related to the talk or whatever.
Well, everyone is thinking about their question. Please feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you. We do have, Ajahn, a question from Mon Rivera, and he's watching on Facebook. So he says, thank you for the instructions, Bhante. My question is given the descriptions of the jhana stages in the suttas. How does the vipassana insight stages, such as Bhanganyana, in yoga practices such as energy work, chakra activation, and Kundalini awakening fit in?
Okay, with the chakras, Ajahn Lee points out how you can focus on different states that he calls the resting spots of the breath. I talked about just now how sometimes you feel the breath is not something you're bringing in from outside, but it's an energy that's actually originating in the body. And many times you can focus on those spots as your central parts where you're going to be noticing the breath. As for the Kundalini, I would say don't try to arise that, or don't try to raise that unless you've got a teacher right with you, because if your energy channels are blocked in any way, the energy comes up and it gets skewed off to some place in an awkward direction, and then the energy that comes up gets blocked. Right? I'd say it's better to just follow Ajahn Lee's instructions on how you open up all the channels in the body with the breath, and not trying to activate any kind of energy above and beyond what the breath would give you. As for the insight practices, the Forest tradition doesn't talk so much about the stages of insight. Those stages of insight were imposed on the process of insight much later than the canon. Some people experience some of those stages, other people will not experience some of the stages. The important thing is that you develop this passion, disenchantment. And different people will find that they are dispassionate and disenchanted, or they have passion and they have enchantment about different things. And it's learning how to figure out exactly what is it that's keeping me here, what's keeping me tied down, and working with that. That way, instead of trying to fit your insights into a particular pattern, you begin to see, okay, I have to deal with my particular problems. The large outline is, as I said, trying to give rise to disenchantment. And one of the ways you can do that is you see the jhana state itself. Once you've solidified it and you have it solidly there, then you see that it too is composed of aggregates, form, feeling, perceptions, fabrication, and consciousness. These things are inconstant, stressful, not self. And whichever of those aspects, their inconstancy, the stress, or the not selfness of those things, strikes you as particularly disenchanting. You focus on that. And that's how you get past even your attachment to the path.
He has a follow-up question, Ajahn. How are the 4 jhana stages correlated with the 4 Ariya stages?
They're not. In other words, you can gain even the highest level of attainment from just the first jhana. But different people will find that the first jhana for them is not enough. They'll have to get the mind more settled. But this is going to be a very individual matter, no matter which state of jhana you're in, whether it's the form jhanas or even the formless jhanas. When you start gaining the insights that would lead to the disenchantment and dispassion that you're aiming for.
Ajahn, I have a few questions. In your book, With Each and Every Breath, you mentioned that there is a sense of fullness when we do meditation, and that sense of fullness is piti, right? So when I have my meditation, I do experience sort of goosebumps throughout the entire body, but I'm not sure if that is the sense of fullness which you're talking about.
Well, piti can manifest itself in different ways. For some people, Ajahn Lee emphasizes the fullness. Goosebumps are another way. Chills running through the body. A sense of kind of an overflowing energy welling up inside the body, that would also count as piti. Whatever way your energy expresses itself, that would count.
Okay, then Ajahn, then my next question is because I experience the goosebumps, and if you say that it's piti, then but my next feeling that comes in is I don't feel it's a neutral feeling, so I don't get the sukha. I'm not sensitive to it. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, maybe you're not sensitive. In that case, you say, I'm not ready to go, move on. I've got to figure out, I've got to back up here and get a sense of ease and well-being. Because sukha doesn't necessarily mean happiness. It just means that things feel pleasure, they feel easeful.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, when is it appropriate to change the meditation topic? Let's say in one sitting, or in one sitting, is it okay to change between samatha topics like goodwill and breathing?
Sure, you can decide anytime that your mind is not settling down with the breath, you're having trouble, then you say, okay, let's try something else that would get the mind something a little bit more calm, and then I can work on the bring it back to the breath.
So it's okay to interchange between samatha and vipassana as well? My last question is, there is this thing about the one who knows. So I have gone through your video about oneness is a water snake. I've gone through this video quite a few times, and I would just like to check if my understanding is correct. So the one who knows is sort of an intermediary stage between the unrefined stage and the stage where we perceive the khandhas as separate aggregates. Is it?
Yeah, well, the sense of the one who knows. This is maybe an overly literal translation of the Thai phrase. It's basically your sense of awareness. And then there's a question of, is the awareness the same thing as its object? In some states of concentration, it will feel that your awareness and your object become one thing. You're trying to get them to separate out, but they try to get them to separate out the way that, say, oil and vinegar would separate out in a bottle of salad dressing.
But then I'm having trouble grasping the how to bring the aggregates together with this one who knows.
Okay, in this case, the aggregates would be something separate. The one who knows is the aggregate of consciousness.
Ah, okay. Consciousness being vijnana.
Vijnana, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Adrian.
Thank you, Thanissaro.
Yes, thank you. So my question is, so intellectually, I am forgiving. Means whenever I think that some injustice has happened across or something like that to me, I forgive them and I don't think about it. I don't whatsoever think about it or anything. But when I converse with the person again, it's like something unconsciously registers the things that their insecurities and those things, and it's just normally in a normal talk it just comes that I am hurting them kind of thing. And I have noticed that many times in myself, and I want to fix that. Means intellectually I have understood all the things, and I don't, means I try to consciously I'm doing everything I can. So how to fix that unconscious level?
Well, remind yourself, again, the purpose of having goodwill for those people is so that you will, not behave in an unskillful manner around them. That doesn't mean that you're going to forget what they've done. You can remember that, but you say, okay, even though they've hurt me, I have to have goodwill for them. Now, this doesn't mean that I will be open and loving and everything to them. It's simply that I don't want to cause them harm. I don't have to like them.
Okay.
But I don't want to cause them harm. And you've got to keep that consciously in mind. You say, okay, I'm dealing with this person who's harmed me. I know that they're dangerous. I have to be careful around them, but at the same time, I have to be even more careful about my intentions around them. And so what you may want to do is, if you know that you're going to meet up with someone like that, kind of rehearse in your mind what you're going to say and what you think their reaction will be. And where there's something, a voice in your mind says, no, I really want to get back. You say, okay, why? What's going to be accomplished? Try that at the end of a meditation.
I have a second question. One thing is, I want to get things, means even when it comes to the practice of Dhamma, I want to get ahead to my peers. It means it's not like just I want to get ahead. I don't want to share kind of thing. Means I know, means yeah, means I know that it's a bad thing, and I want, means I want to know what practice I can do so that I can help myself progress in that, means become generous or something like that.
Okay, if you're not generous, how's anybody going to be generous with you?
Yeah.
Think about that. It's not a game where somebody else gets ahead of you, you lose points. If you help them, maybe they'll be willing to help you, and then you help them, then they can help you, and then people help each other up that way.
Yeah.
Think of it that way.
I always try to do that. Means just the thought comes. That thought like means okay, I should get ahead. I should move ahead or like that. That's okay.
Okay. Well, again, this is where it's good to think about your mind as like a committee, and you've got some pretty interesting voices in your committee. And you just say, okay, these voices I don't have to listen to. These are the voices I have to argue with. Don't say, okay, just because it happens in my head means it's me. A voice happens in my head. You know Ajahn Lee's image of the different germs that are going through your bloodstream, and they drop off thoughts as they go through your brain. Use that image to remind yourself, okay, just because a thought comes to my head doesn't mean I have to believe it, but that it's really my thought. And remind yourself you have other voices as well.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have recently come to Buddhism, having been a yogi for a long time, and I was drawn to this event because of the title, Beyond Coping. I've listened to some of your work, and I wanted to ask a question about skillful means for working with chronic pain and disease. And if I can give a little context about my own situation, I have a chronic neurological pain condition which causes severe disabling pain. I've worked with it to the point that I am working well and helping others, supporting others who have the same condition, and then also was diagnosed recently a year ago with breast cancer, and was able to work through my treatment with that by recognizing that death is a wonderful counselor that helps us to choose what our actions are in the present moment. I had an insight years ago that whatever conditions I observe other people to be in are conditions that I will be in myself or have been in myself. And so I will experience all of those states. So my current practice is to not have an aversion to my pain state or to be in self-blame, but to be in happiness despite suffering, and to be more compassionate and aware of and help other people who are suffering. So it's a bit circular, but I was wondering if you might be able to speak to that.
When you deal with pain, the first step is to find some other part of the body that is not in pain, so you can focus your attention there. And you develop that section, that part of the body by the way you breathe. You use the different breath techniques that we had there, so that you have a sense, okay, this is my safe spot. And then think of the good energy from that safe spot going around and sort of going through the pain area to sort of dissolve away any tight walls of tension you may have built up around the pain. Sort of relax those. See if that helps to lessen the pain. But even if it doesn't lessen the pain, at least you've got a good place to go. Then the second thing is you can start investigating the mind's relationship to the pain, and particularly what its perceptions are around the pain. Because as the Buddha said, it's not so much the physical pain that's bothering the mind, it's the way we perceive it that brings the physical pain into the mind. I've dealt with this topic in a book called The Five Faculties, and another one called The Karma of Mindfulness. These are both available on Dhamma Talks, so you might want to look at the sections on dealing with pain as they're both there. Let's see if that helps.
Hi, Ajahn, from Belarus, as always. Thank you very much for your teachings, especially for clarifying a lot of hard places like mindfulness and vulnerable truths and other. And also loving kindness that you translating as a in another way, not loving kindness, but
Goodwill.
Goodwill, yes, goodwill. And it's all, these things are very clear. And every time I read your books, it's something new. I find something new and very clear for me. And I have some questions concerning, for example, such things like Buddhism and politicians and politics. What was Buddha attitude to politics, especially in when we have different kind of situation in our world, in our times. When, for example, in Belarus, we have some problems with the government, and in the USA and so on and so forth. What is your Buddha's attitude to politics?
Well, the Buddha's attitude basically not to get involved. And I learned an important lesson years back when there had been an uprising in Bangkok, and it had been put down very harshly. And then the king stepped in, and the people who had put down the uprising were out of power. And one of the people who had given an order to shoot people in the streets of Bangkok suddenly found himself without a job. His daughter was staying at the university in Bangkok, and she couldn't stay there any longer because the other students in the university were attacking her all the time. So she was sent over here to what we call a diploma mill in San Diego, which is a university that gets cheap degrees. And a couple of months later, the father came up to the monastery and was basically asking advice, how to deal with the fact that he no longer had any power, and how to apply the Dharma to his life. And the fact that the monks were were not on neither side of that particular thing meant that we could talk to people on both sides afterwards. And I think that's the advantage of not taking sides, is that when the whole thing settles down, okay, you can still speak to both sides. Because Ajahn Suwat had no use for the guy's policies, personally, but he had never said anything, so he was a neutral advisor and could give advice to people after things like this have happened.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question is concerning rebirth. What is your attitude concerning rebirth? Because in Theravada tradition, it's no middle, no between state between rebirths. But some people said that in Pali we can find some evidence of this between state, as in later tradition.
Those intermediate stages are actually another kind of rebirth. Like if somebody dies and the spirit hangs around, that's another kind of rebirth.
But for example, in Tibetan tradition, they said that it's in between states. You mean that it's a kind of rebirth? Yes.
It's already a kind of rebirth. Yeah.
It's already kind of rebirth. Okay, thank you very much. And the last question: how we could know what we are in? Not we, but for example, a practitioner of the high level. How he know or knew that he's on a stream entry, or he's on another level of, is any verifying from outside, or he knows by himself? Because today I've saw some scientific talking about dreaming, for example.
And no scientist can tell you whether you've achieved stream entry or non-returning. There are no physical Stream entry will be seen in the fact that the person has virtues that are in line with the 5 precepts. But it's truly an internal matter, and a lot of it has to do with just learning how to observe yourself really honestly and clearly. You know, when I've had this, you know, it's usually, and it's an impressive experience. It's not say you wake up and say, "Gee, was that stream entry or not?" It was very impressive. But then the question, once it's impressive like this, okay, was that stream entry or was it something less? You have to observe your mind afterwards, and you have to be honest with yourself.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, Venerable Sir. Just want to say thank you. Thank you. May you be happy, well, and safe, Venerable Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Ajahn, for sharing with us the Dhamma. So my question is, in this age where there's also an infodemic, can you give us an advice as to how we can be more discerning with the information we listen or tune into?
Ooh. Try to find whatever websites you feel are really authoritative. It's going to be individual person. Which type of medicine that you feel comfortable with, which kind of treatment you feel comfortable with, which kind of authorities you actually believe. But remember, very basic things about the masks and everything, trying to be thinking about other people, that you're not only protecting yourself, you're also protecting others. And when you're making a choice about what you're going to do in the day, okay, am I exposing myself unnecessarily or not? But try to look at this. Well, here's an opportunity. I don't know what the situation is in the Philippines right now, to what extent you're forced to stay in your homes, but say, here's a good opportunity to practice. And look at that as your prime opportunity, as the prime issue, the keeping with the practice, making the most of this as a practice opportunity.
Go ahead.
Hi, Ajahn. Thank you very much. I am in my meditation, as I told you before during the last meeting, I get concentrated very much when I concentrate on pain, one physical pain that I have, and the best meditation sessions, in my best meditation sessions, I can peel off the perceptions related to the pain so that I see it as only unpleasant feeling, and I am struggling to peel off that feeling from the potential that gives me the pain. But most times when I meditate, my way to that concentration is mostly a kind of a hit and miss journey. Because most of the time, as you told us correctly, my committee members start chatting in the autopilot mode. So I'm struggling to find the causes and struggling to find the ways that my mind wanders to autopilot mode. What should I do?
Okay, well, just notice, when the mind, largely, there's part of the mind that says, I want to get away from this pain. And it'll start churning up things to pull you away. And if you can find a spot in the body that you can make as your comfortable alternative, when there's parts of the mind that's, okay, enough of this pain, I'm out of here. So, well, here's another spot to go where it is more comfortable. Provide an alternative there in the body, so that you can negotiate with those voices in the mind. And then when you feel rested, okay, then you go back into the pain.
Yeah, even I concentrate on the parts where there's no pain. Sometimes I find in the middle of the committee members chatting in the autopilot mode. So how to find the initiation of that that initial moment of that wandering of my mind, because it is amazing to know that, that I'm doing it, but without my knowledge, I'm wandering into that zone.
Okay, well, part of it is, you can tell yourself, okay, the chatter can go on, but I don't have to get involved. Just because there's chatter going on doesn't mean you have to listen in on what they're saying. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And then if you begin to notice that the question is less whether or not there's chatter, the question is, when do I get pulled in? And that you can watch.
Yeah.
What do they say that pulls me in?
Yeah.
And then you can take that apart. Why would that attract me?
Yeah, I'm finding it very difficult to find the initial moment that I walk into the chatter zone.
Okay, well then say, I'm out of here. You can chat without me. I'm not in here anymore. Try to get faster. Get faster about that. That's the only way. Get faster.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Ajahn. Thank you very much for your session. This is concerning kind of dilemma I have about meditation, the rhythm of my breath. Now, when I do breath meditation, when I am agitated, I kind of feel like very short breaths, and then when I am in a kind of a pensive mood, I will have this hazy kind of breath. So this, I immediately recognizes the breathing patterns in my body during meditation. And what happens is that when I kind of see these patterns of breathing, then I kind of go into a certain type of breathing where everything is calmed down, and then my mind stays in that. So I like that breathing pattern. So I all the time, most of the time, as soon as I realize a different kind of a breathing pattern, I try to regulate my breathing into that pattern which I like. And that makes me stays on that breathing pattern. So I just want to ask whether that is a kind of calming down of bodily fabrications, or whether I am like clinging on to something which I like, or is it the correct way that I am doing my breath meditation?
Okay, as long as it provides a place for the mind to settle down and you feel comfortable and you can stay there, and it's perfectly fine, because concentration is an issue of finding something the mind likes. But it's good, again, thinking of yourself as having cooking skills, it's good to be able to fix several different kinds of dishes, because sometimes the body doesn't, the calming breath is not good for the body all the time. Sometimes it will need something more energizing. So notice, okay, what is not only what I like, but what is it that my body needs right now? And look for that. But it's perfectly okay. I mean, if you call it clinging, it's a good clinging. It's like clinging to a ladder. You have to hold on to one rung, and then you hold on to this one, and then you hold on to that one. And if you let go, you fall back. So you got to hold on. So hold on to something good.
About gladdening the mind, I find this teaching helpful for me. How do I let go and relax without overdoing, to the point that one is no longer observing objectively, but craving for pleasant states?
Okay, again, as long as you're practicing concentration, you're going to want to have the pleasant states. And that kind of craving is, there's the desire that causes suffering, but then there's the desire that's part of the path. It's found in right effort. The desire to give rise to something skillful. The desire to maintain and develop what's skillful. So as long as you're, find it, the mind is settling down in a way that feels good, then that's perfectly fine. There will come a point where you develop on your own a sense of sort of dispassion for the state of concentration, that no matter how good the concentration gets, you're not quite so taken with it anymore. And that's when you start developing more of your insight. But this is something you can't really push, because sometimes the mind has its needs to settle down. It has its rhythms. And if you tell yourself, well, I should move on to the next step, maybe the mind's not ready. there will come a point that when on your own you begin to get a sense of dispassion for even the pleasure of the concentration, you want to move on to something better.
At what point do we just allow natural breathing patterns instead of regulating or choosing breathing patterns?
When you find that all the breathing patterns that you've chosen are not comfortable and you can't figure out a comfortable way, you say, what the hell, I will now just let the body breathe on its own. Let it find its own rhythm. I'm not going to interfere. Because you're going to be influencing the breath one way or another all the way up into the first level of awakening. That's the only moment when you're not influencing the breath. So the question is not so much when do I stop influencing it, but how do I get more skillful at it? And one of the ways of doing that is if you tried all the alternatives that you're aware of, that you've mastered in the past and they're not working, you say, okay, let the body breathe on its own, see where it's going to go.
Thank you, Ajahn. This question is from Stephen McGovern. I've spent much of my life recovering from Catholic guilt. Can you speak of shame as helpful? Or you often speak of shame as helpful. Can you talk about the difference between guilt and shame?
Okay. Guilt is a sense of that I'm a bad person. Whereas the shame that the Buddha is talking about is that realizing that certain actions are shameful things to do, and you would not want to do those. And the proper response when you realize that you have done something that you really is beneath you is not to get tied up in remorse, it's just to realize, okay, that was a mistake. I don't want to repeat the mistake. And then you have to have lots of goodwill for yourself, goodwill for everybody involved. That's not the response of guilt. The guilt just, that you're a bad person, you're just a bad person. You're stuck there. Whereas with the Buddha's approach, okay, you say, that was a mistake, but hey, I'm a human being. Human beings make mistakes. And then you have goodwill for everybody. And you say, God, I'll just try not to make that mistake again. That's the healthy attitude towards shame.
Thank you, Ajahn. We have Malia.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm grateful for the teaching and for support given to me. So, thank you for opportunity to join the genuine Buddhist tradition. So, and I may ask a little bit detailed question or share my reflections. And I would like to start from two topics. First, concern the nature of individual. Does one who reached Nibbana identical with others freed beings already, like who reached Nibbana before him? And the second question, what is dear to me, concerns realism in Buddhist teaching. And I would want to approach these two topics through the statement you made before about that all beings being born in accordance with their karma in all different forms, all different places. Like you look at people, you realize you have been there before. You have been in the same position. Not infinite, but taking all of these kinds of existence can be arrived through becoming, because the number of these forms is immeasurable due constant changing. So, and the principle of this endless variation is the particular. Like, unlike other traditions which come out from verbal knowledge or inferential wisdom, Dhamma comes from direct experience and has its object in particular. So, like truth and any reality based on the particular, not on universal, like something metaphysical or something like that. And from another hand, if we, for example, do the extension of the universe far enough in space and time, we can represent beings as functions, and because they are constantly changing, the range of their values will coincide, and that does that entail that there is no difference between beings? So no difference between human being and small brain thing, for example. It looks unrealistic. So and the problem is much more delicate, because as I know, as I read, Ajahn Man said that he gained awakening being in the 19th eon of existence. Does that mean that there was a beginning? And my question may look like philosophical or metaphysical, but it's not, because it's far more practical. For me, it's very important to investigate more deeply, to look into the problem, because not to picture, not imagine in my mind the entity, but deal with something coming from direct experience. And I would like to deal with things so that the scriptural knowledge would not abstract the real entity. So it's a little bit maybe too much words, but I hope you can understand me, and please give me your answer. I'm sorry for being nervous.
Okay, the question of what you become as you enter nirvana, at that point you're no longer a being, because beings are created by attachment. Wherever there's attachment, there's going to be a being. But once there's nirvana, they're no longer counted as a being. In which case you can't say, oh, they're the same being or a different being, or both or neither. There's no attachment. And then you're freed from the necessity of being a being at that point. Up until that point, you've been beings, and the Buddha says you cannot count. I think what Ajahn Mun was saying was that it was 19 aeons since he had first made the desire to gain awakening. And taking it that long. Because the Buddha says you cannot conceive of how things began.
Oh.
And he says that's one of those questions. You say you solve the problem of suffering and then work on these problems. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So does it mean that there actually was not a beginning any? So it's endless cycle of samsara.
It's totally inconceivable.
Totally inconceivable. But does that entail that there's no difference between beings? For example, me and some mosquito, we are the same. Does it mean?
No. You're not the same being, no.
This is from Julia, and she's calling in from Sweden. She's asking, do you have any knowledge on how female meditators have experienced how the mind and meditation varies across the menstrual cycle?
Sorry, nobody's talked to me. No, nobody's talked to me about that. Sorry. Sorry.
Okay. So we have a few more here. You're going to be influencing the breath all the way up to the first level of awakening, quote unquote. Bhante, can you clarify what that is? I'm not immediately following the connection between influencing the breath and stream entry. Thank you.
Okay, stream entry is the first point where there is no present karma being made. Up until that point, you're always making present karma, and it's always going to be in one of the three kinds of fabrication. Stream entry is a moment where there is no present karma, there are no present intentions, there's no fabrication happening in the present moment, which means there's no experience of the six senses. So up until that point, there always will be an intentional element in how you breathe, which is what fashions the breath.
And a question from Facebook. This is William Rosel's question. Can you please ask Ajahn, is a perception of the heartbeat while focusing on the breath beneficial? Sometimes I time my breathing with my heartbeat, like 3 beats for the in-breath or 4 heartbeats for the out-breath. Is this okay?
You will have to see how that influences the state of mind you develop. I personally have always stayed away from that because I found that it starts forcing the heart too much. Just going to let the heartbeat be its own thing, and you want to be more in touch with the needs of the body as a whole, rather than just what the heart is doing.
Of all the precepts, why did Buddha single out lying as the one that takes away the goodness of people?
Okay, well, you can kill somebody and that affects them only in this lifetime, but you can lie to them and give them something that would make them give a wrong belief that would affect them for many lifetimes.
So it wouldn't include a white lie?
But if you think a little white lie is okay, then it starts spreading and spreading and spreading. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, this question from Krishna again. Could you ask Ajahn about the books and reference where he has dealt about overcoming laziness? How to differentiate between your being lazy or complacent with being comfortable in the practice and things around?
I haven't written a book on that one yet, sorry. I'm too lazy to write a book on that.
Oh, okay, and then yeah, so just one more question from Mahesh, please. And Mahesh, we'd like to be respectful of Ajahn time, so if you could keep it short.
Ajahn, I'm a consultant physician. I'm a doctor, so coming out in that perspective with my Western education, I'm going to thank you for giving me insight about the total body sensation. It is a big landmark in meditation, I guess, because at the beginning, when I was told to breathe through the arm, breathe through various parts of the body, I thought that is not possible. But later I realized, out of my Western education also, we know a thing called proprioception of the body, your inner sense of your body awareness, that when I linked that knowledge with your advice, a whole new avenue and whole new door open to me in my meditation. So I would like to thank you about that, because it is so difficult for us who had the Western education to understand this breathing process, total body sensation. Thank you.
Let me tell you, it was not easy for me either. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. So grateful for you giving us time today. And we would love to just thank you. So everyone, if you can unmute yourselves and just say sadhu 3 times, we can allow Ajahn to leave our room first.
Sadhu.
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 Sadhu. Thanks, Ajahn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
everybody be well.
Thank you.
You too.
Yeah, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.